Welcome back to my channel. This channel specializes in writing about epic tales and myths from around the world. Today, we continue with a well-known story from the series 1001 Nights titled The Seven Voyages of Sinbad. The greatest adventure ever told here is the detailed content. Chapter I, The Call of the Sea. In the golden age of Baghdad, when the city's towers shone like spears of light against the desert sun, there lived a young man named Sinbad ibn Hamid, son of a prosperous merchant whose caravans once crossed the sands from Damascus to the distant shores of India. Yet, wealth could not anchor the restless heart of youth, and Sinbad, though born amidst silk and spice, felt the whisper of the sea in his blood. When his father passed away, leaving him a fortune beyond counting, Sinbad squandered it upon pleasures and feasts. His house became a palace of music and laughter. But as the moons turned, the gold faded, and friends disappeared like morning mist. One dawn, as he wandered through the harbor, the call of the gulls echoed above him like fate itself. He stood before the vast, shimmering gulf of the Persian Sea, where the horizon burned in the fire of dawn, and he knew his destiny awaited beyond it. He sold what little remained, bought a share in a merchant vessel, and set sail upon the waters that had haunted his dreams. The sails billowed like white wings, the timbers creaked with life, and Sinbad felt, for the first time, that he belonged not to the land, but to the sea. The crew-hardened men from Basra Aden and Zanzibar watched him curiously. They laughed when he stumbled, mocked his soft hands, but Sinbad learned swiftly how to tie the rigging, read the stars, and face the wrath of storms. At night, beneath the vast canopy of constellations, he would gaze upward, feeling as though the heavens themselves guided his voyage. Weeks passed in fair weather. The ship traded along the coasts, gathering pearls, silks, and rare spices. Yet the ocean, in all her splendor, is a fickle mistress. One morning, as they drifted near a small island covered in emerald grass, the sailors rejoiced, thinking to rest and cook upon the shore. Sinbad followed, his heart light as the sea breeze. They built fires, sang songs, and cooked their fish. But as Sinbad bent to gather wood, he felt the ground tremble beneath his feet. The island groaned, the waves surged, and the sea erupted in chaos. To his horror, the ground itself began to rise, scales glistening beneath the flames. It was no island. It was a giant fish, slumbering for centuries beneath the sea, now awakened by the heat of their fires. "By Allah, it moves," cried the captain. "Back to the ship, shouted another. The sea exploded into foam. Men fell screaming into the waves. Sinbad was thrown backward, the sky spinning above him. When he surfaced, he saw the ship drifting away, the crew powerless against the storm that followed. Alone upon the furious sea, Sinbad clung to a plank of wood and prayed to God for mercy. For days he drifted, beaten by wind and hunger. The sun burned his skin, and thirst clawed at his throat. Yet he refused to surrender. At last, when the storm broke and silence fell upon the waters, he glimpsed land, a green island crowned with palms. He crawled ashore, trembling but alive, and kissed the earth in gratitude. That night, as the moon rose over the whispering waves, Sinbad sat beside a small fire and gazed into the endless horizon. The sea had nearly claimed him, yet he felt no hatred, only awe. He whispered softly, "If this is the beginning of my fate, then let the sea write the rest of my story." And thus began the first voyage of Sinbad the Sailor. a tale that would echo across generations, a man bound by destiny to the waters, forever chasing the edge of the world. Chapter 2. The Island of the Giant Fish. The morning after his shipwreck, Sinbad awoke upon the sand, the cries of seabirds echoing above him. His body ached from the sea's fury, yet his spirit burned with wonder. Before him stretched a paradise of palms and flowering vines. Streams of clear water ran through the rocks, and the scent of fruit drifted in the warm breeze. 4 days, Sinbad explored the island, gathering coconuts and dates, drinking from the springs, and resting beneath the stars. But loneliness crept into his heart. The sea, calm now, glittered endlessly before him, as though mocking his solitude. He prayed for rescue, but none came, until one dawn, he saw a distant shape upon the horizon, a ship. With desperate joy, Sinbad tore his turban and waved it high, shouting until his voice broke. At last, the ship turned toward him, sails flashing in the sun. The sailors hauled him aboard, astonished to find a man alive upon such a remote isle. Sinbad bowed to their captain, telling of his lost crew and the monstrous island that had devoured them. The captain, a stern man of Oman, listened with disbelief until Sinbad described the ground that trembled like a living beast. Then the man's face turned pale. "By the Merciful One," he murmured, "you landed upon the back of a fish so vast, it sleeps for centuries. Many have met death upon its spine." Sinbad shivered, realizing the sea itself had tested him and spared him. For many weeks, they sailed across calm waters. The new crew respected Sinbad's courage and shared their trade with him: pearls from Serendib, spices from Yemen, and silk from Cathay. Sinbad began to regain his merchant spirit, noting the patterns of stars and tides, learning the secrets of distant ports. One day, the wind died. The ship drifted into stillness. A heavy silence filled the air, broken only by the creak of wood and the cry of gulls. Then, far to the east, thunder rolled, though the sky was clear. A sailor pointed and cried out. There, rising like a mountain from the sea, was a colossal shadow moving beneath the waves. "It cannot be," whispered Sinbad, his heart pounding. "Another of the giant fish." The captain's voice was grim. "No, my friend. That is the ROC, the bird whose wings darken the sun." But it was not the ROC that emerged this time. As the water churned, they saw the back of another immense creature, its scales like plates of iron, its eyes glowing beneath the waves. It circled them once, twice, then vanished into the deep. When night fell, the sea grew uneasy. The moon hung red and swollen, and a strange music echoed from below, as though sung by the spirits of drowned men. The crew whispered prayers, clutching their amulets. The next morning, they anchored near another island, small, green, and peaceful, to gather wood and restock food. Sinbad, though wary, joined them, remembering too well the false island of his first voyage. He prodded the ground with a spear and found it solid. Laughing at his own fear, he relaxed as they set up camp. Yet as the sun climbed, Sinbad noticed something strange. The water around the island shimmered with light, as though the sand itself glowed. Birds flew overhead in frantic circles. Then the earth beneath them began to thrum with a deep, rhythmic pulse. The captain shouted back to the ship. Sinbad turned and saw the earth split open. Steam hissed from cracks. The ground heaved and the ocean boiled around them. The island shuddered, lifting like the chest of a waking beast. Men screamed, tents and barrels tumbled into the waves. The island rose higher, and Sinbad saw, with horror, the vast, glistening eye of the creature beneath them. "It's alive," someone shouted. A wall of water crashed over the shore, sweeping Sinbad into the sea. He fought to stay above the surface, clutching a barrel as the waves dragged him into chaos. The monstrous fish dove, its tail smashing through the storm like thunder. The ship barely escaped, but Sinbad, once more, was lost to the mercy of the sea. For 2 days he drifted, until at last the current carried him toward a lush coast. Exhausted but unbroken, he crawled ashore and collapsed upon the sand. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself beneath the shade of towering palms, and before him stood a group of men in silk robes, their turbans adorned with jewels. They spoke a language he barely understood, but their gestures were kind. They brought him food, and soon Sinbad learned they were merchants from Serendib, the island of diamonds. His heart stirred. Fortune, it seemed, had not abandoned him yet. That night, as the wind rustled through the palms, Sinbad stared at the stars and whispered, "The sea takes and the sea gives, and I am its servant still." Thus ended the second voyage of Sinbad the Sailor, and the sea, hungering for his spirit, was not yet done with him. Chapter 3: The Valley of the Diamond Serpents. The island of Serendib was unlike any place Sinbad had seen. Its mountains gleamed like glass under the tropical sun, and the air smelled of cinnamon and sandalwood. Gold and silk flowed through its markets, and merchants from every corner of the world bartered beneath canopies of color. Yet beyond all the wealth of Serendib, there was a tale whispered by sailors in hushed tones, a legend of a place called the Valley of the Diamonds, guarded by creatures no mortal dared to face. Sinbad, whose heart could never rest long in safety, was captivated by this story. The merchants warned him, "Many have sought the valley, O traveler, but none have returned. It is a pit so deep that no rope may reach its floor. There the diamonds lie shining like stars, but they belong to the serpents of the earth, who guard them jealously." Sinbad smiled. "Then I shall find a way that no man has found before." He gathered a small crew of bold men and set out across the island's wild interior. The journey took days. They crossed steaming jungles, climbed ridges sharp as blades, and forded rivers whose waters ran warm from the breath of unseen beasts. Finally, they stood upon a high cliff overlooking a deep chasm. Sunlight pierced the mist below, and something glittered faintly at the bottom, a bed of diamonds, each the size of a dove's egg. One of the men gasped, "By Allah, it is true." But then came a hiss-a-low, terrible sound that made the rocks tremble. From the shadows slithered serpents as thick as tree trunks, their scales shining like molten bronze. Their eyes glowed yellow in the gloom, and their tongues flickered like crimson lightning. The crew fled in terror, but Sinbad stood rooted to the spot, frozen between awe and dread. As the serpents coiled, the earth itself seemed to breathe. Sinbad turned and ran, his heart pounding. He and his men barely escaped the valley's edge before night fell, collapsing in exhaustion upon the cliffs above. That night, Sinbad lay awake beneath the stars, listening to the serpents' distant roars. He recalled the words of an old sailor he had met in Baghdad. "Diamonds are the bones of the earth, and only those who risk being devoured may claim them at dawn." When the others refused to continue, Sinbad descended alone, with nothing but his courage and a coil of rope. He knew the valley could not be reached by climbing, so he remembered another tale. Merchants once threw fresh meat into the pit. The diamonds stuck to it, and when the giant ROC birds swooped down to seize the meat, they carried the jewels skyward, where the traders would retrieve them. Sinbad smiled grimly, then let the legend guide me. He gathered several carcasses of wild sheep, which he and his men had hunted earlier, and hurled them into the abyss. Then, hiding behind a boulder, he waited. Hours passed, the air thick with silence, till a shadow fell over the cliffs. The ROC had come. Its wings spread wider than a ship's sails, and its cry shook the heavens. With monstrous talons, it seized the meat and soared skyward. The diamonds clung to the flesh, glittering like fallen stars. Sinbad saw his chance. As the bird lifted the last carcass, he wrapped his arms around it and held fast. Up, up, they rose through mist and wind, until the valley disappeared below. The ROC flew to a mountain nest, dropping its prey among bones and branches. Sinbad released his grip, gasping for air. When the ROC's shadow faded, he tore open the meat and filled his pockets and belt with the gleaming stones. As he began his descent, he saw figures climbing toward him, traders who had followed the ROC to its nest, just as he had heard in the tales. They greeted him with astonishment, thinking him a spirit. "No mortal could have ridden the ROC one," whispered. Sinbad only smiled. "The sea has taught me many things. Fear is not among them." The merchants loaded the diamonds onto their beasts and led Sinbad back to Serendib, where the king himself received him with honor. When Sinbad laid before him a diamond so large it filled the monarch's hand, the court gasped. The king, delighted, made him a guest of the palace and bestowed upon him silks, gold, and a ship to return home. Before departing, the king said, "You have seen what no man has seen, Sinbad. The sea must favor you." Sinbad bowed. "The sea favors no one, my lord. It merely watches who survives." When his ship finally reached Baghdad, the people rejoiced to see him alive. He built a new house by the river and filled it with treasures from his voyage. But even amid comfort, his eyes often wandered to the horizon, for the sea had whispered to him again, promising yet greater wonders and dangers yet unseen. Chapter 4: The Island of the Giant, ROC. After months of peace in Baghdad, Sinbad once more felt the restlessness of the waves stir within his heart. The songs of sailors, the smell of salt, and the stories of distant lands called to him like a forgotten prayer, though he had sworn to remain at home. One morning he awoke before dawn, sold much of his treasure, and joined a merchant ship bound for the eastern seas, where none but the bravest dared to sail. The voyage was fair at first. The sea shimmered like polished silver, and the wind filled their sails with gentle strength. Yet, on the 20th day, a thick fog fell upon them, and the current carried their vessel toward unknown waters. When the mist cleared, they saw before them a sight beyond imagination, an island of white sand, so vast and smooth that it gleamed like marble under the sun. "Land ho!" cried the lookout. But as they drew near, the island seemed to breathe. They dropped anchor, eager to explore. Sinbad was among the first to disembark. The sand was warm, the air strangely still. Palm trees lined the shore, their leaves glittering as though dusted with pearls. The crew gathered wood and began to cook their meal, laughing and singing. But Sinbad, ever cautious, noticed the ground trembling beneath his feet. Then the island began to move. A deep rumble echoed from below. The sea churned violently, and the sand split apart, revealing an enormous eye the size of a ship's sail staring up at them. Terror seized every man. It was no island, it was the back of a rock, the colossal bird whose wings could eclipse the sun. By the merciful one knit sleeps upon the sea, Sinbad shouted. But it was too late. The fires they had lit scorched the creature's hide. With a deafening cry that split the heavens, the ROC rose from the waves, sending the ship spinning. Men were hurled into the air like pebbles. Sinbad clung to a piece of mast as the sea swallowed the wreck. When the storm of wings and foam passed, he found himself alone, drifting on a plank. For 2 days, the waves carried him until he reached another island, desolate, rocky land under a burning sky. Exhausted, he crawled ashore and fell unconscious upon the sand. When he awoke, the ground trembled again, not with the steps of men, but the shadow of wings. Overhead circled the ROC itself, vast and terrible, searching. Sinbad hid behind a cliff, but his eyes followed the creature to a nearby valley. There he saw its nest, a mountain of sticks and bones, large enough to hold an army. Within it lay an egg as big as a house. Curiosity overcame fear. Sinbad crept closer. If I cannot escape this island, perhaps the ROC will carry me away, he whispered. He waited until the bird flew off to hunt, then climbed the nest and tied himself tightly beneath one of the ROC's legs with his turban cloth. When the bird returned, it shrieked and flapped its mighty wings, unaware of its tiny passenger. With one colossal thrust, it soared into the clouds. Sinbad's breath was torn away by the wind. The world below vanished in mist, and the air turned cold and thin. For hours, they flew above endless seas and mountain peaks that gleamed like daggers. At last, the ROC descended, landing on a high plateau scattered with bones, the feeding ground of the giant. When it released its prey, Sinbad cut himself free and rolled into a pit for safety. The ROC tore apart the carcass it had carried, devouring its meal. Then, with a cry that echoed across the mountains, it rose once more into the sky and disappeared. Sinbad emerged from hiding, trembling but alive. Around him lay jewels, glittering in the sunlight, mixed with skeletons of beasts and men. He realized with dread that he had landed in another deadly valley. From behind the rocks slithered monstrous serpents, drawn by the ROC's leftovers. Their scales rattled like armor, their eyes burning with hunger. Sinbad seized a bone as a weapon and climbed the rocks, praying for deliverance. For 3 days, he wandered that cursed place, starving and weak. Then, by fortune, he saw a movement in the distance, men climbing down with ropes. They were traders from the coast, come to collect ivory and gems left by the ROC. Seeing Sinbad, they cried out in astonishment. By the name of the prophet, a man still alive among the serpents. They hauled him up and gave him water and food. When he told his story, none could believe it. "You have ridden the ROC itself," one murmured. "The sea has marked you, Sinbad." He joined them aboard their ship, which soon reached the island kingdom of Rukma, where the rulers traded amber, pearls, and silk. There Sinbad sold some of the jewels he had gathered and grew richer than before. Yet in his heart he knew wealth was not what he sought. It was the thrill of survival, the song of the unknown. When he returned once more to Baghdad, he gave alms to the poor, shared his fortune with friends, and told his tale to any who would listen. Yet, as he gazed upon the calm Tigris, he felt that the sea was calling him still. "I have escaped the ROC and the serpents," he mused, "but fate has more storms yet to send." Chapter 5: The Old Man of the Sea. After his perilous escape from the valley of the ROC, Sinbad dwelled in comfort for a time in Baghdad, surrounded by friends and the laughter of his household. Yet, as always, peace to him was a fleeting dream. The city's music could not drown the echo of waves in his memory, and the scent of spices and sea salt returned to him with every breeze that passed through the bazaar. One evening, as he sat beneath the moonlit dome of his courtyard, Sinbad said aloud, "Comfort dulls a man's spirit. I was born to face the unknown, not to rot in silk." So once again, he gathered a crew, purchased fine goods from the markets of Basra, and set sail toward the southern seaslands, whispered to be haunted by winds of madness and guarded by spirits unseen. For many weeks, the voyage was kind. They traded along the coasts of India, then turned toward the islands of the Emerald Archipelago, where the sea shimmered like molten glass. But fortune, ever fickle, changed its face. A tempest rose from the east, black and wild as the wrath of the gods. The ship was hurled like a toy upon the waves. Lightning split the sky. Thunder crashed like falling mountains. Before dawn, the vessel struck a hidden reef and shattered. When Sinbad awoke, he lay upon a narrow beach strewn with driftwood. Around him, the sea hissed and withdrew, leaving no trace of the ship or its crew. Alone once more, he wandered inland until he found a stream that glistened between palms heavy with fruit. He thanked the Almighty, ate, and drank deeply, then followed the stream toward a distant hill. As he climbed, he beheld a strange figure seated upon a rock near the water, a gray, wizened man, shriveled as old bark, naked save for a rag of leaves around his loins. His eyes gleamed with cunning, and his limbs, though frail, moved with serpent-like quickness. The old man beckoned silently. Sinbad approached cautiously and greeted him. The creature did not speak, but pointed toward the stream, then made a gesture as if begging to be carried across. "Ah, you are too weak to cross," said Sinbad kindly. "Come then, I shall help you." He lifted the old man upon his shoulders, wading through the shallow water. But when they reached the far side, the man did not dismount. Instead, he tightened his legs around Sinbad's neck. Iron-hard, unyielding, Sinbad shouted in pain and rage, but the creature only laughed a dry, hissing sound and struck him on the head. From that moment on, Sinbad was his prisoner. Day and night, the old man clung to him, forcing him to walk wherever he desired, plucking fruit for him, fetching water, never allowing Sinbad a moment's rest. If Sinbad stumbled, the creature beat him with his bony fists. His grip was like a chain, his eyes cold as stone. Sinbad wept bitterly. "O merciful one, have I escaped the ROC only to be enslaved by this demon?" Weeks passed. His body grew thin, his heart heavy. The old man guided him always toward the coast, yet never released his hold. Then one evening, Sinbad noticed wild grapes hanging from a vine. Remembering the wines of Baghdad, he gathered them, crushed them into a skin, and let them ferment beneath the sun. The next day, he offered the drink to the old man. The creature sniffed it, then greedily snatched it away, drinking until his eyes gleamed red and his laughter turned to slurred murmurs. His legs loosened slightly. Sinbad seized the chance. With all his remaining strength, he gripped a stone and struck the old man's skull. The creature cried out once, then fell lifeless to the ground. For a long time, Sinbad stared, trembling, scarcely believing his freedom. He cast the body into the sea, whispering, "May the waters keep what they birthed." After resting and washing, Sinbad explored further along the coast. There, by miracle, he met a group of sailors filling barrels of fresh water. They were traders bound for the island of Sohor, and when they heard his tale, their captain exclaimed, "Praise be to the Almighty! You have slain the old man of the sea, whose curse has killed many. Few have ever escaped his grip." They took Sinbad aboard, treating him with honor. The voyage to Sohar was filled with calm seas and warm winds. Upon arrival, the merchants presented him to the island's ruler, a wise and generous king who delighted in tales of the ocean. Sinbad told his story before the royal court of storms, serpents, and the monstrous Arociand. The hall echoed with wonder. The king laughed heartily. "Truly, the sea obeys no man but loves you, Sinbad. You must dine at my table until you are ready to return home." For months, Sinbad lived in luxury, exchanging stories for gold and learning the customs of the islanders. But his spirit, as ever, could not stay bound to one shore. When a great trading fleet prepared to sail for Basra, he took leave of the king, who gifted him a ship's worth of treasure in gratitude for his tales. Upon his return to Baghdad, Sinbad built a grand house facing the Tigris. He gave alms to the poor, freed his servants, and declared, "I have been a slave to the sea and to a demon, but now I am master of my fate." Yet that night, as he sat before his window, watching the stars reflect upon the river, he smiled faintly. "Perhaps," he whispered, "one more voyage remains for me." Chapter 6: The Island of the Monkeys and the Sea of Stones. When the gold of Sohar jingled faintly in Sinbad's hands, it was not the sound of wealth he heard, but the whisper of adventure. Though Baghdad welcomed him with celebration and comfort, the horizon called once more, vast and blue and merciless. Thus, after a season of rest, Sinbad once again loaded a ship with good silks, pepper, amber, and fine carpet sand, joined a caravan of merchants bound for the southern seas. His friends tried to dissuade him. "Sinbad, have you not fought serpents and demons enough?" He only smiled. "Each wave conceals a story, and I have yet to hear them all." For many days, the journey was blessed. The sea was calm, and stars burned bright as jewels upon black silk. But on the 30th day, the wind shifted to the east, harsh and strange. The captain frowned. "This is the wind of the Stone Sea," he said. "Beyond it lie islands cursed by the jinn. We must turn back." But the storm came faster than their prayers. The sails snapped, the masts groaned, and the ship was hurled into a fog so dense that the world vanished. When it lifted, they saw an island unlike any they had known, lush and green, full of fruit trees and waterfalls. Exhausted, they anchored near the shore and went ashore to rest. Sinbad, ever curious, climbed a hill to look around. From above, he saw something astonishing: a city half buried in the jungle. Its towers cracked, but still crowned with golden domes. He returned to the ship and urged the captain, "Let us explore. There may be treasure or wisdom lost to time." The captain hesitated but agreed, leaving half the crew behind to guard the ship. As they entered the ruined city, they found carvings of strange, long-armed creatures, part man, part beast, etched upon the walls. The streets were silent, save for the rustle of leaves. Then came a sound, a soft chatter, growing into a thunderous roar. From the treetops poured hundreds of monkeys, their eyes gleaming, their fur gray as ash. They surrounded the men, shrieking and leaping from pillar to pillar. The merchants drew their swords, but Sinbad raised his hand. "Hold, let us not shed blood in ignorance." He offered fruit to the nearest monkey, who cautiously took it and chattered approvingly. Then more came forward, taking food, dropping curious trinkets in exchange pieces of bright gems and polished stones. Sinbad realized these creatures guarded the remnants of the city's treasures. That night, while camped in the ruins, the captain spoke in awe. These must be the children of some ancient curse, perhaps men once, now bound to this form for greed. At dawn, Sinbad ventured alone deeper into the jungle. There he found a lake of perfect stillness. At its center, a monolith rose from the water's surface, covered in runes that shimmered like starlight. He felt drawn toward it. As he touched the stone, visions surged in his mind. Ships lost to the depths, sailors turned to stone, and a sea beneath the world where pearls whispered of forgotten kings. Startled, he withdrew, but the ground trembled. The lake's calm shattered as waves of glowing stones began to rise. A sea of stones, living, breathing, swirling like a storm of glass. He fled back to the shore, where the crew was already shouting. The tide had turned, and the ship was being pulled toward the glittering storm offshore. The monkeys screeched wildly, tossing down fruit and stones, as if warning them to flee. "Cut the anchor," Sinbad roared. "Raise the sails." The sailors obeyed, and the ship tore free, catching the wind just before the vortex of stones devoured the bay. Behind them, the island trembled, and the ruined city sank into the jungle once more, swallowed by mist. Only then did Sinbad look down at his hand and see one of the strange stones the monkeys had dropped, a gem that pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. He turned to the captain. "We have escaped the sea of stones," he said. "But something tells me its secret is not finished with me yet." The captain crossed himself in fear. "May Allah protect you, Sinbad. The sea loves Ubud. It also toys with you as a cat with its prey." For the next several days, they sailed under calmer skies, though Sinbad often dreamed of the glowing lake and the eyes of the stone monkeys watching him from the trees. When at last they reached an inhabited island, they learned that it was ruled by a queen known as Zamira the Wise, famed for her knowledge of the heavens. Sinbad resolved to seek her out, hoping she might explain the visions that haunted him. And so, with the strange gem in hand, he set forth toward the palace, unaware that this meeting would bind his fate to the stars themselves. Chapter 7: The Queen of the Starborn Isle. The island that rose from the mist seemed carved from moonlight itself. Its shores gleamed white as pearl, and silver towers shimmered beyond the palms. Birds of colors unseen in any land sang in the canopy, and a fragrance like jasmine and amber drifted through the air. Sinbad stepped ashore with reverence, for he felt the air hum with unseen power. The people who greeted him were tall and graceful, their garments woven from threads that glowed faintly in the sun. They spoke softly, their words lilting like music. One of them bowed and said, "Stranger from the sea, the Queen of Stars awaits you. She has seen your coming in the movements of the heavens." Sinbad followed them through streets paved with marble and lined with trees whose leaves shimmered like silver. At the city's heart stood a great palace, domed and radiant, with walls inlaid with sapphires that reflected the sky. Upon a dais of crystal sat Queen Zamira, her beauty like that of the first dawn. Her eyes seemed to hold galaxies within them, and her voice, when she spoke, echoed like 1,000 harps. "Sinbad, son of the restless sea, I have watched your journeys through the stars," she said. "You have defied storms, monsters, and fate itself, yet you still seek what cannot be found." Sinbad bowed low. O Queen of the star-born isle, I seek only to understand what I have seen, the lake that breathed with stones, the visions that haunt my nights. Zamira raised her hand, and the strange gem he carried leaped from his palm into the air, glowing with blue fire. This, she said, is the heart of the depths. It was forged in the beginning of time, when the seas first sang. It binds the souls of sailors who die upon the water, and it chooses one mortal each age to carry its curse or its blessing. Sinbad's heart trembled. Then why me? Because the sea loves those who do not fear it, she replied softly. But it also tests them. The heart has shown you visions of what lies beyond the world's edge realm, where the oceans fall into darkness and light is reborn. Only one who has crossed the 7 seas may reach it. She stood and descended from her throne. Her robes shimmered with constellations, and her bare feet left trails of starlight upon the marble. You have crossed 6 seas, Sinbad. The 7th awaits, and it is not of this world. Sinbad felt a chill. Then my next voyage shall be to that sea. Zamira smiled faintly. It will not be an easy path, for the heart grants power, but it also consumes. Each voyage you survive feeds its hunger. Beware that you do not become what it desires. That night, the queen hosted a feast in his honor. Music filled the halls, dancers spun like comets, and wine sparkled like liquid gold. Yet, amid the joy, Sinbad could not shake her words. Later, she summoned him privately to her observatory, vast dome of glass, through which the stars burned bright. She handed him a map, inscribed with lines of light. "This will guide you to the Sea of Whispers," she said. "Follow it, and you shall find your destiny. Lose yourself to it." As dawn broke, Zamira led him to the harbor, where a magnificent ship awaited sails woven from silver thread, its hull carved with symbols that glowed faintly under the rising sun. "Take this vessel," she said. "It was built for the one chosen by the heart. But know this, Sinbad, when you sail beyond my island, no mortal compass will guide you, only the light within your soul." She reached out and touched his brow. A warmth spread through him, as if a star had kissed his spirit. "May the heavens watch over you," she whispered. Sinbad bowed deeply. "If I survive the 7th sea, I will return and tell you what lies beyond the horizon. Then you will be the first man to do so," Zamira said with a knowing smile. As the silver ship glided away, the people of the island sang a farewell hymn. The queen stood upon the shore until he vanished into the distance, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and hope. And as night fell, far out upon the open ocean, Sinbad looked upon the heart of the depths glowing in his hand, and murmured, "O sea, old companion, one more voyage, then let us see which of us truly endures." The stars above shimmered in answer, and a wind, like the whisper of destiny, filled the sails. Chapter 8: The Sea of Whispers and the Song of the Jinn. The wind that carried Sinbad from the starborn isle was unlike any he had ever known. It did not roar nor rage, whispered in 1,000 voices, faint and sorrowful, like the sighs of sailors long dead. The sea beneath his silver ship shimmered with strange lights, swirling like liquid sapphire. And now and then faces seemed to flicker within the waves, gone before his eyes could focus. Sinbad stood at the bow, gripping the rail. "The queen spoke true," he murmured. "This is no mortal sea." For days, the ship sailed through a world without stars or sun. The horizon glowed faintly, as though caught between dusk and dawn. Sometimes he heard laughter in the wind, sometimes weeping. His crewmen of the starborn isle grew fearful, for the whispers seemed to call them by name. "Captain," said one sailor one night, trembling, "they call to us. My brother's voice, swear, I hear it from below." Sinbad looked into the black waves and saw faint shapes, drifting figures with pale faces, their eyes open but unseeing. He turned away quickly. "Do not listen," he said. "The sea tests us. Plug your ears and keep your hearts strong." But the whispers grew louder. They spoke of treasures lost, of kingdoms drowned, of promises unkept. Some of the men went mad, diving into the waters, believing they could embrace loved ones who had perished long ago. On the seventh night, a storm gathered without wind or rain. The sea rose silently, and from its depths emerged a vast whirlpool glowing with pale light. From within, a voice rang out, not human, not divine, but vast as the sky itself. "Mortal, who carries the heart of the depths," it said, "you trespass upon the realm of the Jinn of water. Speak why you have come, or be swallowed by eternity." Sinbad knelt upon the deck, shouting above the roaring vortex, "O mighty spirit, I seek not to steal nor conquer. I am a sailor, a seeker of truth. I carry this heart not by will, but by fate's hand." The sea rippled, and from the center of the maelstrom rose a colossal figure, half smoke, half water, its eyes twin whirlpools of blue flame. It towered above the ship, its body stretching into the clouds. This was Ashuriel, the Jinn of the deep. "You speak of fate," thundered the Jinn, "yet you bear what was lost to us eons ago. The heart of the depths was ours before men ever touched the sea." The heart in Sinbad's hand pulsed, glowing brighter. He felt a strange warmth in his chest, and suddenly he could hear another voice, soft, melodic, within his mind. "Do not fear him," it said. "I am bound to the heart. I was once mortal, as you are. Tell him that the curse is broken only by the voyage completed." Sinbad straightened. "O great Ashuriel, I do not seek to wield the heart's power, only to end its curse. If you would take it, show me how to release it." The Jinn's form swirled, the waves calming beneath its vast shadow. "Then you must do what no sailor has done. You must sail into the sea of Whisper's heart, to where all the lost voices come from. There lies the gate of the abyss, where the world of men ends and ours begins. But beware, the gate demands a sacrifice." Sinbad bowed his head. "So be it." From it fell a single droplet of glowing water. When it struck the deck, it became a pearl, radiating soft light. "This will guide you. It shines brightest when you near the gate. Follow it, mortal, and perhaps the sea will spare you." With that, the Jinn dissolved into mist, and the ocean fell silent once more. Days passed as Sinbad and his remaining crew followed the glowing pearl's light. Food grew scarce. The men whispered prayers at dawn and dusk. Finally, one morning, the sea turned to glass, and in the distance appeared a vast circle of shadow, the gate of the abyss. It rose from the water, like an endless whirlpool rimmed with fire. Above it, stars burned though it was day, and the air hummed with the power of 1,000 storms. The heart in Sinbad's hand flared, and he felt the voice within him grow stronger. "We are near," it said. "Beyond that gate lies the truth of the sea." The crew cried out in fear. "We cannot go closer. That is the mouth of the underworld." Sinbad's gaze was calm. "Then turn back, if you must, but I will go on." He took the helm himself, guiding the silver ship toward the churning circle. The winds howled, the deck shuddered, and light blazed around him. As the ship crossed the threshold, the sea vanished. Sinbad found himself suspended in a vast void of stars, sailing through air that shimmered like water. Below him moved shapes, giant leviathans made of light, spirits of ancient sailors, and the ghosts of lost cities drifting like dreams. The voice spoke again. Now you understand, Sinbad. The sea is not merely water. It is memory, the soul of the world itself. Every voyage, every death, every song belongs to it, and you are its witness. Then the world began to twist, and the ship fell through blinding light toward whatever destiny awaited him beyond the gate of the abyss. Chapter IX. The realm beneath the waves. When Sinbad awoke, the world around him had changed. There was no sky, no wind, no sail to catch the breath of the sea. The ship floated in silence through a realm of endless blue light, where the very air shimmered like water, and the sea seemed to have turned inside out. Fish glided through the air like birds. Coral grew in mid-air, as if suspended by invisible threads. Sinbad rose slowly, gripping the mast. The deck was dry, yet waves moved beneath it, as though the ship itself sailed upon invisible tides. "Are we dead?" whispered one sailor. Sinbad gazed into the distance. "No," he said softly. "We have crossed into the sea, beneath the seethe, the world of the jinn and the lost." They drifted forward, past cities made of coral and pearl, ruins of once great kingdoms, now glowing faintly in the deep. Towers twisted like seashells, golden domes gleamed with light from no sun. Strange creatures swam between them, spirits of the drowned, their forms wavering like smoke. At the heart of this realm rose a vast citadel, shaped like a spiral shell, stretching endlessly upward into the light. Around it circled whales of pure glass, their songs echoing like bells. As the ship approached, the waters parted, revealing a staircase of glowing stones leading into the citadel's gates. The men trembled. "Captain, we cannot go there. That place is not meant for the living." Sinbad tightened his grip on the heart of the depths, which now glowed as bright as the moon. "Then wait here," he said. "If I do not return, sail for Hometh. This world allows you." With that, he descended the shining steps alone. Inside, the walls were alive with light. Images danced across them, scenes from Sinbad's past voyages, from his youth in Baghdad to the moment he first set sail across the seven seas. But they were not memories. They were reflections, living and breathing, replaying every choice he had made. A voice spoke, soft as a ripple. "Welcome, traveler of the endless horizon." Before him appeared a woman made of flowing water, her eyes like deep sapphires. She wore no crown, yet power surrounded her like the tide. "Who are you?" Sinbad asked, bowing his head. "I am Narita, keeper of the deep realm," she said. "Once, I was mortal like you. I sought the secret of the sea and was granted eternity as its guardian. You hold what was once mine, the heart of the depths." Sinbad held it forth. "Then take it." "I never wished for its power, only to return it and free myself from its curse." Narita smiled sadly. "You misunderstand. The heart does not curse, it chooses. It chose you because you carry the same hunger I once did, the hunger to know what lies beyond the horizon." She waved her hand, and the sea itself opened beneath them. Sinbad saw visions of countless sailors, some noble, some greedy, drawn by the same dream of discovery. Many perished, some found kingdoms, others vanished, remembered only by the waves. "The sea remembers all," Narita said. "It gives, it takes, and it binds every soul who dares to cross it. You, Sinbad, have reached where none before have come. The heart calls for completion, but you must decide. Will you stay and learn its secrets, or return to the world of men and forget all you have seen? Sinbad looked into the swirling depths. If I choose to stay, what becomes of me? You become one with the sea, Narita replied, eternal, but without form. You will know all, but never again set foot on land. And if I return, the sea will forget you, but so will its gifts. You will remember none of this, and your voyages will fade like dreams. Sinbad stood in silence. All his life, he had sought wonderlands no map could mark, treasures no king could weigh. But in this moment, he realized the greatest treasure was not gold nor knowledge, but the freedom to sail. He knelt before Narita. I choose neither eternity nor forgetfulness. I choose the journey. If the sea allows it, let me sail once more, not as its master, but as its friend. For a moment, Narita was silent. Then she smiled a smile, brighter than moonlight on calm waters. So be it, Sinbad. You have spoken as one who understands the true heart of the sea. She raised her hands, and the heart of the depths floated between them. It burst into 1,000 drops of light, scattering like stars. One drop landed upon Sinbad's chest, sinking into his skin. The heart will live within you now, said Narita, not as a burden, but as a compass. Wherever you sail, the sea will know your name. The citadel trembled, and the walls began to dissolve into waves. Narita's form faded. Farewell, wanderer. May your legend ride every tide. Sinbad felt the world twist around him, light engulfing everything. He heard the sound of waves crashing, and then, suddenly, wind. Real wind. He opened his eyes to find himself back upon his ship, under a clear sky filled with stars. His crew surrounded him, weeping with joy. Captain, you've returned from the depths. Sinbad rose slowly. In his chest, he felt a gentle warmth, the pulse of the sea itself. He looked toward the horizon, where dawn began to rise. The voyage continues, he said softly. The sea has not yet told her last story, and as the ship set sail once more, the waters beneath shimmered with faint lights, as though the spirits of the deep watched and whispered his name, Sinbad, the Eternal Sailor. Chapter 10. The Island of Mirrors and the Shadow of the Moon. The dawn after Sinbad's return was unlike any other. The horizon shimmered not with sunlight, but with a faint silver glow, as if the moon refused to vanish. His crew whispered that the heavens had changed course for their captain, and perhaps they were right. For the sea, calm as glass, reflected not the sky but something deeper, stranger. Sinbad stood at the prow of his ship, gazing into the horizon where waves broke into shards of light. We sail east, he said. The wind will come when it wishes. The crew obeyed, though fear glimmered behind their eyes. For the ocean seemed to watch them, its surface rippling as though alive. By the third day, they reached an island none had seen on any map. It rose from the sea like a jewel, mountains of crystal, forests of glass, and rivers that flowed with silver water. When the sailors gazed into those streams, they saw not their reflections, but their dreams, some glorious, some terrible. Be wary, warned Sinbad. This island tempts the heart. Whatever you see, do not follow it. Yet even as he spoke, the island called to him. He felt it apple like a whisper at the edge of thought. They anchored near the shore, and as Sinbad stepped onto the shining sand, the island stirred. Every grain shimmered like a mirror, catching fragments of his reflection. He saw himself not as he was, but as he might have been, a prince, a beggar, a corpse, a god. Then came the sound, a faint melody, carried by the wind, neither human nor divine. It drew him inland through trees that bent like silver ribbons. At the island's heart stood a vast lake, so smooth it could have been a sheet of polished glass. In it shone the full moon, though the true moon hung faintly behind clouds above. Sinbad stared down, and his reflection moved before he did. "You've come far, wanderer," said the reflection. Its voice was his own, yet deeper, older. "But do you know why the sea spares you?" Sinbad frowned. "The sea tests all men. I have survived by wit and will." The reflection smiled. "No, Sinbad. You live because you do not yet know yourself. The sea keeps you alive, so you may confront the one truth you flee." The waters rippled, and from the reflection rose a shadow dark as night, shaped like Sinbad, but with eyes like twin moons. It stepped from the lake, dripping light instead of water. "I am the sailor who never stopped," said the shadow. "Every voyage you abandoned, I continued. Every treasure you left behind, I claimed. I am what you would be if you gave everything to the horizon." Sinbad drew his curved sword. "Then you are what I must face." The shadow laughed. "You cannot kill me, for I am you. Only the sea can decide which of us sails on." The ground trembled. The mirrored lake shattered into countless fragments that floated in the air like shards of crystal, reflecting infinite versions of the two sailors, one of light, one of shadow, locked in silent battle. Each strike rang like thunder. Each clash sent waves of silver through the air. When Sinbad's blade cut through his double, the wound healed instantly. When the shadow struck him, he felt no pain, only a deep, echoing weariness. At last, both dropped their swords. "You fight to live," said the shadow. "But what is life to a man who cannot rest?" Sinbad's breath came heavy. "Life is the voyage itself. Rest is for the shore, and I am not yet done sailing." He lifted his gaze to the moon reflected in the fragments. "If you are my other self, then come with me not as foe, but as the part that knows no fear." The shadow paused, then, slowly, it smiled. "At last, you understand." It reached out hand, dissolved into smoke, streaming into Sinbad's chest. The shards of the lake fell like rain, reforming the silver waters. The moonlight brightened until it filled the world. When it faded, Sinbad stood alone on the quiet shore. His crew found him at dawn, sitting beside the sea, his sword planted in the sand. "Captain," said the first mate, "are you well?" Sinbad turned, and for a heartbeat his eyes gleamed like silver. "I have faced my reflection," he said, "and the sea has shown mercy once again." They set sail before sunrise. As the ship left the island behind, the moon sank at last, and the ocean's surface turned to calm blue. But far beneath the waves, the island's reflection still shone, as if watching him go. That night, Sinbad dreamt of the moon descending to the sea, its light forming a path of silver across the waves. A voice whispered, "One more journey, sailor, beyond the storm that devours the stars. There you will find your fate." Sinbad awoke, his heart trembling with both dread and wonder. He looked to the horizon, where storm clouds gathered like mountains. "Tomorrow," he said softly, "we sail into the storm." Chapter the 11th. The storm that devours the stars. The dawn was crimson. Clouds hung low and heavy, veiling the sun like a shroud. The air itself trembled, charged with the scent of rain and thunder, yet unborn. Sinbad stood at the bow of his ship, the Star of Basra, his gaze locked upon the horizon where the sky met the darkening sea. For 3 days, the wind had whispered warnings. Now it had gone utterly silent. Not a single gull called, not a wave dared move. It was as if the ocean held its breath. "Captain," murmured the first mate, clutching a rope as though it were prayer beads, "this storm, it's not like others. The sea itself seems to wait." Sinbad nodded slowly. "Aye, it waits for us." The crew crossed themselves in fear, muttering invocations to Allah and the spirits of the deep. Yet Sinbad only smiled faintly, his eyes gleaming with strange calm. For in his dreams, the moon had promised him this storm, and now the promise was kept. By midday, the sky split open. Lightning tore the heavens in half, and the first roar of thunder was so vast it seemed to come from beneath the world. The sea rose in walls of black water, each wave the height of a palace. The Star of Basra groaned under the assault, its masts bending like reeds. "Reef the sails," Sinbad bellowed. "Let the sea test us, but not take us." The sailors moved as one, terrified yet loyal. For they had followed Sinbad through wonders no mortal had seen. Islands of fire, birds with wings of iron, seas of living glass. But none of that had prepared them for this. The storm struck. Rain fell like shards of glass, slicing through the air. The ship leaped and plunged between mountains of water. The sky above was a chaos of light and darkness, where stars flared and vanished as though devoured by unseen mouths. And amidst that chaos, Sinbad saw something moving within the storm, not cloud nor lightning, but form. It was vast, a serpent made of cloud and flame, coiling through the tempest. Its eyes were black suns, its breath was wind. It was the devourer of stars, the spirit of the endless sea, the one that tests all who dare cross the final horizon. The crew screamed as lightning burst around them. "It comes for us," one cried. Sinbad grasped the wheel, his cloak whipping like a flag of war. "No," he shouted above the roar. "It comes for me." The storm answered with laughter, deep, thunderous, ancient. Sinbad ibn Hamid, it spoke, its voice the sound of waves collapsing. "You have sailed my seas and stolen my secrets. You have defied the depths and returned. No man may challenge the ocean and live forever." Sinbad raised his sword, though the wind threatened to tear it from his grasp. "If I have stolen, it is only what the sea has given me. If I have defied, it is because I was born to sail beyond the edge of the world." Lightning struck the mast, splitting it in flame. The serpent reared high, its form filling the sky. "Then face the end, sailor of men. Let the sea claim what it made." It dove, the storm collapsing inward, a whirlpool of shadow and light. The ship was swallowed whole. Sinbad was thrown into the heart of the tempest. He spun through void and lightning, through waves that glowed like molten glass. Around him swirled fragments of all his voyages. The giant bird, Roc, the jeweled fish of Serendib. The lost sailors turned to stone. Then came silence. He found himself standing upon the sea itself, though it was no longer water but a mirror of stars. Above him hung the moon, enormous and silver. Below him, in the mirrored depths, he saw his ship, his men, and his own reflection. The sailor who had begun this journey so long ago. The reflection looked up. "You have come to the edge, Sinbad. The sea asks only one question. Will you sail beyond it?" Sinbad closed his eyes. He felt the call again, the same whisper that had first drawn him from Baghdad's walls. It was not the sea that called, nor fate, but the part of him that had never stopped longing. He opened his eyes. I will sail beyond. The reflection smiled and stepped back into the depths. The mirror shattered. Sinbad fell through stars, through storm, through darkness, until he struck solid ground. The rain had stopped. The waves were calm. The sky was whole again. The serpent was gone. The star of Basra drifted quietly beside him, half sunk but afloat. The crew, exhausted but alive, stared at their captain as he rose from the sea. "Captain," one whispered, "what happened?" Sinbad gazed at the tranquil horizon. The clouds parted, revealing a dawn of impossible color: gold, crimson, violet. "The storm devoured the stars," he said softly, "but it could not devour the dream." He looked upward, and for a heartbeat saw the faint shape of the moon reflected in his eyes. That night, the crew built a small fire on the deck and sat in silence. Sinbad told them no tales, for none could match what they had seen. But as they drifted toward the winds of home, every man aboard felt they had crossed not just the sea, but the edge of the world itself. And Sinbad, gazing upon the stars reborn, knew that one final voyage remained. Chapter the 12th, The Return to Baghdad. The Sailor and the Sea. The dawn that rose upon Sinbad's final voyage was unlike any he had ever known. The air was still, the waves calm as glass, and the light, soft, golden, eternal, seemed not of this world. The storm had vanished, but its echo lingered in the silence, as though the heavens themselves paused to watch his return. The star of Basra, battered yet unbroken, drifted toward the western winds. Its sails were torn, its hull scarred, but within it burned the will of men who had faced the storm that devoured the stars and survived. Sinbad stood alone at the prow, the morning light shining upon his face. He no longer looked the man who had first left Baghdad in youth and arrogance. His eyes, once filled with the hunger of adventure, now carried something else, a calm born of knowing. As they neared the familiar coastlines of Basra, the crew began to weep. The sight of land, of palm trees swaying in the desert breeze, was a promise kept by heaven itself. "Captain," said the first mate, "after all we have seen, the giant birds, the islands of glass, the beasts of the deep, what shall we tell the world?" Sinbad smiled. "Tell them that the sea is a mirror. What a man brings to it, it will return. If he sails with greed, it devours him. If he sails with wonder, it teaches him the language of the stars." That night, as the ship anchored in the quiet harbor, Sinbad walked alone through the sleeping city. Baghdad was as it had always been, fragrant with spice, alive with laughter, and utterly unaware of the storms that raged beyond its walls. He passed merchants counting their gold, children chasing shadows, and storytellers spinning tales beside the bazaar. None recognized him, though he had once been one of them. He smiled faintly. He no longer needed their recognition. The sea had written his name where no man could read it, in the tides themselves. When he reached his old house, the doors creaked open as if they had been waiting. Dust lay thick upon the tables, but sunlight streamed through the latticed windows, filling the rooms with warmth. Sinbad sat where his father once had, beside the great wooden chest that had once held the family's fortune. He opened it, and inside lay the treasures of all his voyages: pearls from the Serpent Isles, the feather of the ROC, the sapphire scale of the sea dragon, the mirrored stone from the Island of Dreams. Yet, as he looked upon them, he felt no greed, no pride, only memory. Then he saw something new among them, a small seashell, silver as moonlight. He did not remember taking it. When he lifted it to his ear, he heard the faintest whisper, the sound of the sea, endless and alive. He closed his eyes. In that sound, he heard every storm, every island, every heartbeat of the ocean. It was the sound of his own soul. The next morning, the Caliph of Baghdad summoned him to court. Word had spread that Sinbad the Sailor had returned from the farthest reaches of the world. "Sinbad," said the Caliph, seated upon a throne of gold, "we have heard your name sung by sailors and poets alike. Tell us, what truth did you find at the edge of the world?" Sinbad bowed deeply. "O Caliph of the faithful, I have found that the world has no edge. Every horizon only hides another. The sea is endless, as are the hearts of those who dare to sail it." The Caliph smiled. "And yet you have returned." "Aye," said Sinbad softly. "Even the sea teaches rest. A sailor must one day return, lest he forget why he set sail." The court fell silent. Some thought his words madness, others wisdom. But the Caliph, wise among men, nodded. "Then rest, Sinbad. Baghdad shall be your harbor." And so he did. Years passed, the city changed, empires rose and fell, yet Sinbad remained older, quieter, but never bitter. Children came to his door, begging for tales of the sea, and he told them gladly. He spoke not of monsters or treasures, but of courage, patience, and the strange mercy of fate. And when the moon was high, he would walk to the riverbank, where the waters of the Tigris flowed into the unseen ocean. There, he would cast his gaze toward the horizon, smiling faintly, as though listening to an old friend. One night, when the moon hung low in silver, Sinbad sat by the water's edge, the seashell still in his hand. The wind was soft, and the stars shimmered like distant islands. He lifted the shell one last time, and heard not the roar of the sea, but a gentle voice. "The voyage never ends, sailor. The sea awaits you beyond the stars." He smiled. "Then let me sail once more." When dawn came, the people of Baghdad found his cloak folded neatly upon the sand. His footprints led to the water's edge and stopped. No trace of him remained. Only the shell lay there, glinting in the sunlight, humming softly with the eternal song of the sea. And from that day forth, sailors who braved the far horizons swore that, in the heart of a storm, they sometimes heard a voice crying through the wind, strong and fearless, "Hold fast, brothers. The sea spares those who love her." And thus ended the voyages of Sinbad the Sailor, the man who sailed beyond fear, beyond greed, and found in the endless sea not treasure, but truth. The end, the 7 Voyages of Sinbad the Sailor, a tale of destiny, wonder, and the eternal call of the ocean.